back. Now, South Africa is a melting pot of cultures and languages. Former Reserve Bank Governor Tito Mboweni recently faced a backlash for speaking English on a xiTsonga radio station. And our question this morning is, are indigenous languages under threat? And what can be done to pass them on to the future generation? To explore this topic, I'm joined in studio by guests who need no introduction. Dr. Ringo Madlingozi, Tirhani Mabasa, as well as an independent analyst, Thabo Mashau. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Mulweni. Are we facing an era where our native languages are diminishing?
We are, unfortunately, it's sad for me to be saying this during Heritage Month, where we're supposed to be celebrating our diverse linguistic communities as we are South Africans, but we are unfortunately facing that because we see people who are in better positions to promote our languages and not conversing in them in the media that is actually for them to be using their language. So I can say sadly that our languages are eroding.
Dr. Ringo, you are one of the artists in the country who has maintained singing in isiXhosa. Is that deliberate, and why is that?
First of all, I started singing in English, and then I was changed by somebody who was actually an English man. Said, hey, listen, if you want to sing to your people, if you want to connect with the people, if you want your people, if you want to talk to them, talk to their heart, sing in the language that they understand, talk to them about the places that they know, be with them and everything. So I realized that it is very important, and that is when I started to connect with my people. I started to be with with them, what they think and how they think, so that it became an easier thing now to be with them, to connect with them, and it is very important that we should be using our languages. We learn from, I also have to learn other languages so that I understand you better, and I guess it's a what you call this, a very sign of respect also,
Indeed.
When I'm singing in your language, that's why in my songs I would get one or two lines like that are not my own mother tongue, but I put it in, so that it's like I'm giving that sign. I want to know what I'm talking to you, talk to me back, and it's very important.
Are we interested, Thabo, who languages?
I think the desire could be there if it is fueled. It cannot be a function of an accident. It has to be done deliberately. And if we just leave it up for chance, I think we are in for something that is very interesting and dangerously so. Let me just make a very simple example that all of us would understand. We do know that right now, Afrikaans, in terms of a language, it's far stronger than, let's say, your Setswana. And I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about hegemony, the dominance of the language. You go to key institutions, you just go to a mall here in Montana, you will have a sign of parking in two languages, English and Afrikaans only. But taking that, the Bible in Afrikaans was only translated into Afrikaans in 1933. Only yesterday, but the Setswana Bible was done and completed in 1840, and the final version was in 1853. But it just tells you that the Setswana Bible has been there for longer in terms of a language. Afrikaans for a shorter period, relatively speaking. However, it is more dominant than other African languages. Why? It is a function of deliberate institutions, investment into those languages, development, and continuous assessment of those languages. The Randse Afrikaanse University, which was meant to be an institution that protects the Afrikaans culture, the Afrikaans language. So until we do something, we're going to have these discussions forever.
And that leads me to my next question, says Tirhani. We've had not enough time, but we've had some time. Are we being deliberate about, given the context that Thabo has given, about making sure that indigenous languages are pushed enough?
You see, the government has acknowledged by actually making 11 official languages plus one. But I think we need to move from policy to intent. If there are resources made available enough for the languages to be developed, like he was saying, languages are not developed enough. There's no encouragement on our kids to be taught in mother tongue at school. You will find that our kids struggle to access even just the mother tongue, not necessarily accessing other subjects in African language. So we need to put more resources, get these languages promoted so that we can know that the intent is actually to have these languages taught at school, have the kids understand that for me to know who I am, because it's about the issues of identity. I need to know who I am, and for me to know who I am, I need to know what my roots are, what my culture is, and that language forms part of that. So, yeah, promotion. I cannot emphasize more on that.
Ringo, how do we promote within the home? Because sometimes you find parents who are very happy that their kids speak such good English, but don't know their mother tongues.
Yes. I think we should make it a habit, actually, you know, a family law that kids should start to communicate, you know, with their parents, you know, in their mother tongue. Yes, it is, you know, great as you say that when your kid, you know, speaks English through the nose and all that. It's like, wow, you know, my kid is intelligent. Is very intelligent. You know, it's good. You know, and most of it's like also our music. You know, is being sidelined also through adverts. You know, what do you call this? The advertisement side of it. You know, it's like people don't want to use the local music because you know the advertisers won't be you know part of it. You must use international music. You know, and that should also end, because if we start to use our own music, our own cultures and everything, we are actually also talking to the kids that are going to see our music as important as any other, you know, music, and that is more of, you know, the promoting it, you know, in each and every way.
Right. There's always an issue of that common language, because in a country like South Africa, where you have 11 official languages, there's so many languages, sometimes there could be a communication breakdown. So therefore, we have to use this common language. How do we begin, Thabo, to use our languages, or even for the next person, if you're xiTsonga, this is what I'm saying, so that you can learn. If you're Venda, this is what I'm saying, so you can learn.
Yes, I think we saw that very, it's quite an interesting question, because in Soweto we have exactly that. You'd have someone who doesn't speak isiZulu at all, but would understand someone who speaks isiZulu, because there has been somewhat of a potpourri of dialogue and various language components that have been used to transport a certain message clearly on a universal scale. But also, very importantly, we have to remember that, as Bro Ringo has said, firstly, we do that by naming our children in our languages. Right. There is nothing esteemed by naming your child in English for the sake of it, so that you are making it better for those who speak English to be able to pronounce his or her name. That is so wrong. And number two, we have to also remember that as children grow up in our homes, their minds are like sponges. They can suck in as much. So a child can know 5 languages. And we are not saying the child must live in isolation and only know Sepedi. No. As much as they know Sepedi, it's good for them to know English as well, because they'll be existing in a global village. It's good for them. But at that age, they can learn about 5 languages. So why don't we expose them and emphasize your home language? I mean, in schools, in our schools, in Germany, they learn maths in German. And I mean, it's unheard of here to learn maths in Sesotho or Setswana, science, geography, and all these subjects. And we wonder why they do far better than us. Because when a child battles with a language before they get to the grasp of the actual concept of mathematics of any subject, it creates a barrier in the area. So those are the things that we need to take cognizance of and deliberately, as I said, deliberately look into. Mama Gamo said something very important. Our government has to put in resources. Private sector has to support NGOs that are promoting our languages. There has to be a deliberate will. As much as us, as parents, as in the media space, we have to make space for, because if someone speaks in Sesotho, we assume that they are not wise. They're not intelligent enough. But if someone expresses themselves in English, oh, they are so intelligent. So those mental burdens have to be cut down, and as a function of colonialism as well.
Let's expand on those mental challenges that we seem to find ourselves in, Tirhani, because you still find amongst ourselves where people will say, oh, I'm Mashangani, or oh, I'm Zulu. So people are ashamed to speak their languages because of what other groups will say about them. How dangerous is that? How do we fix that?
Yeah, firstly, let me also touch on what you said, that when kids speak better English, we tend to use that as a barometer to measure their intelligence, and that is so wrong. And we also need to stay away from shunning each other. When you speak Tsonga, you're like, okay, what language is that? Hello, we are in South Africa. It's amongst the 11 official languages. So people need to decolonize their minds first. Acknowledge that we are a diverse country linguistically, and get to know that the 11 official languages that they're talking about, it's when one is, you dress like that, I'll assume you are Venda, I'll address you in Venda, and you reply in another language. It's okay. We acknowledge that we are diverse as a country. So we need to understand that we are different, but let's learn to live amongst each other. It's called social cohesion. We need to do that as a country.
Tito Ringo, this thing of us discriminating against people who speak different languages from us, I don't even know by Buyapina, but how can we end it?
You know, I will also you know, go back to how I started singing, you know, in this course, because when I was asked that why aren't you singing in your own language, I was like, man, please, I mean, if I start singing in this course, people would think Ipari. It's like I don't have I'm not streetwise, you know. And that is it killed it from there. Then, but I realized that when I started to sing in my own language and using the you know there are sentences that I can just use in my language, but that'll mean a lot. That where like in English, you know, you'll have to have like 3 or 4 sentences to explain.
Yes.
You know, and we need to come up, you know, with those words and get to introduce them to our kids so that we are proud of our languages. You know, and yes, it is. And through our music, we'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean. A song like Sondela, you know,
Old time.
You know, and it's sort of like cash, you know, it caught people from up north down, and I was surprised how simple that word is, and how big it is at the same time, because it sort of like made it easier for people to understand our language and everything, and I'm glad that I started singing in my language.
Right. Thabo, in wrapping up the conversation, a word perhaps for someone who is still despondent about using their own languages, believing in that whole, but we are a universal people, so therefore we need to converse in this.
Certainly. I mean, we have such beautiful languages. You go to Sesotho, Ringo has just said it. I mean, when he sings in his language, and when you say I love you in English, it seems so commercial, so common, so overused. But when you say and it just takes you on a different journey. Our languages are so rich, are so deep. Our names, they've got meaning. They're not coincidental. And I'm not suggesting that English names are coincidental. But our names, when you are saying it's Utsili, there is a name, there's a meaning behind it. So we have to start using our languages to express ourselves, because language is a transportation mode of our culture, of our emotions, of our thoughts. And the more we use our languages, the better, the more attractive it would be for the little ones listening to Dudu and Thabo and Ringo here, Babua Sesotho talking in isiXhosa and conversing and in xiTsonga, and they hear the richness of that language, the idioms that go with it.
Yes.
And those kind of idioms, proverbs, adages, and sage sayings, we have to embed them in our everyday conversations so that our languages can grow.
All right.
Thabo Mashau, ke a leboha. Tatu Ringo Madlingozi, enkosi tata. Sis Tirhani Mabasa, yakhenza. Thank you very much to my guests this morning. We're taking a short break. This is Morning News Today, Weekend Edition. I'll have